All right, everybody, welcome back to Two Knowbodies Talking Podcast. If you're actually watching us, this is our first video podcast recording. My name is Will. I'm one of the hosts.
My name's Nick, also hosting here today.
And we are incredibly excited to introduce, if you're watching, you can see her on the screen right now. If you're listening, we are excited to introduce Miss Lisa Holland. And I guess, Lisa, we'd love for you to introduce yourself, fill people in a little bit about your education background, as well as where you live now and the business that you're running.
Great. Thanks so much, guys, for having me on. So I am in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I have an integrative practice. I've taken actually a lot of forms. I was everything from a 1,400 square foot facility, very typical, with the PT room and the open room, where we did yoga, because I bring in yoga, and that's how I opened my practice in 2005. So now I actually work with, and I working in the other facilities and in a lot of different varieties of how to kind of have my practice. And now I share space with a psychologist, a clinical social worker, and we have a common area which is big enough for me to maybe have like 9 yoga mats down and have group talks if I so choose. And then I have my private room, and then she has her private room, and I function in there and utilize other people's space for bigger workshops, or I teach yoga over there, basically in partnership. So I work a lot in partnership because I closed my wellness studio, which was multidisciplinary, in the end of 2003 to do some more coaching and going more virtual and doing a lot more of some mentoring and support for the up and comings like you guys. I put myself in a position for that. And my practice really is working and has always worked on a biopsychosocial model and to some extent spiritual. I've worded that differently depending on who my audience is, but it really is about seeing them and their role in taking personal authority and in how they self-view, the effects of this on themselves, and then also how that affects, what they're doing in the world, whether it be their work in a company or at home, or, I work with women's health. So, and that was a bit of transfer. I started as an ATC, PTATC, NCSF, blah, 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 and then, we're going to go with women's health. Then I got into the wellness stuff, and subsequently became a yoga, an experienced level yoga teacher, and just started blending it all. And that's how I evolved my practice. So when I opened up in 2005, I just said, I'm in a new town. What's needed? There was a bunch of pregnant or new families in the area. These ladies were sitting around the cul-de-sac complaining about all the ways their back hurt, and, they're tired, and they were trying to go to the YMCA because it had childcare, but it just wasn't working out. They weren't getting support for what they really needed. And I was like, I approached the YMCA, see if they wanted a women's health kind of physical therapist there. They couldn't understand that. So, just opened up my own little thing and kind of went and waxed and waned with how I needed it for my lifestyle and my family and my risk aversion. And just been going from there, just making it work. I mean, it's funny because I've just molded myself in many different, it's a cash-based always. I just didn't want to deal with the insurance stuff. I was like, why go there? Working just with partnerships with fitness. I see myself mainly as a really great bridge between the fitness world and the medical world.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear your story about how sort of this transition that you've made across multiple aspects of healthcare and fitness. And we want to pick your brain a little bit later about the cash-based practice and your entrepreneurial endeavors. But we have to start out asking, how did you become the BellyGuru? And people know you as someone who's very into yoga and using yoga as part of a physical therapy plan. How did that come about?
Well, like I said, I really, there's 2 stories there. There's a backstory because, again, dealing with gut and intuition and kind of going with that as somewhat of my personality, my personal brand. It was a lot of me knowing myself, and that's sort of what I mentor people with. If you're going to have a brand, let's know yourself. They keep trying to be somebody else, sell what somebody else sells, and then it becomes overwhelming. So my husband actually came up with the name because I was like, well, I need my niche, smartness. See, looking around, like I said, the pregnancy year was my first niche, like just really funneled it down to be the expert in the pregnancy year, all the way from fertility through postpartum. And I said that to be a full year or so and giving them wellness services through it. So, and then it was yoga based. So when you're going to have a company and you're going to try to save money on your marketing, if your logo and your name could basically say like what you just said, oh, you're somebody with yoga and whatever, and and had an image and the colors, thinking about calm and some sort of introspection with my logo, it just had to say a lot because I'm not going to pay for a lot of words in an ad. So that's basically where that came from, bringing in my brand of working through the pregnancy years. The pseudo kind of science was that it always was. And then it really worked out as I kind of branched into their kids and then their husbands a little bit. And then, it really came back to that. And now that I do health coaching and I've been trained with Jessica Drummond through like integrative, like functional nutrition type applications to people's pain and inflammation and their gut health, it really makes it like, even though I'm almost like not working as much with the pregnancy, it still makes total sense because the intention was there. It's kind of like your gut. And when your gut doesn't work in your body, having come from kind of athletic training, in sports, we know that. We know that like if they're eating like crud, I'm not going to see that. I don't care how they were drafted by whoever. It's not. And then when we go to medicine, we're like walking into our stroke patient person, they had a stroke and we're like looking at the nice sugar water they gave them and, the slop of whatever and being like, why can't that guy 3 days get up and stand?
Yeah. I'm wondering, Lisa, just because it caught my ear when you said it, what other names were you playing around with while you were trying to figure out how to really brand your service? I
really did it. I kind of just put it all together and it just popped out. Like my husband's like, what about BellyGuru? Because I wanted to do something about guru for guide. Not to say I'm the expert, but like guru, again, there was a level to that. If you understand yoga more than, fancy poses, get your body toned up, the guru is always just the guide to yourself. You have a guru within. That my teacher, Sri Dharma Mitra, out of New York City, that's what he teaches. Like, he's like, I'm here as a conduit for you to turn the mirror inward and actually see that in yourself. So I knew I wanted something with guru and, so it just kind of, I didn't really have another name. It just kind of came, and then kind of like how I went to Charlotte.
Had to be
intuitive. I just.
Yeah. So then you had a population that you served prior to really incorporating this yoga into your practice. But having done so now, what would you say your clients or your patients are really benefiting the most from? What do you think is the main difference by incorporating that perspective into their care?
It was a way for me to always bring in the mind-body. I always was a mind-body person, again, from just who I was and how I got through things and how I did things. I mean, I was like, I want to do that. All right, focus on what we need to do. And the mindset had to be there for my story. And it was a way for me to bring it in without saying, oh, now I need to be a psychologist and a physical therapist, because that wasn't going to work. How am I going to bill? How am I going to see the patient? It's just, so yoga was very natural on me for other healing, like my attitude and lifestyle. And so I think they're benefiting from the fact that it was a way for me to have a language for them for why they're feeling so cruddy and why they're not getting their work done. And why I used to hate, the malingerer test. Do you guys even learn that? Like, you have the two hands under the heels and tell them to lift, and you're just like, you're lying. I just was like, that's just such a stupid test, because like, what are you going to say? Like, you're lying. Don't come back here. Like, why are they lying? I was always like, why are they lying? Like, when I'd see an athlete and I was like, you just urinated blood. Like, why are we going back? Like, you have to start thinking about, like, you can't go in the game. You can't go. We have to watch them if they had a kidney thing to make sure they weren't having somebody else pee in a cup for them so they could go out and play, or after concussion. Understanding how this is the same thing of the person that doesn't come into your clinic. And so the benefit of that biopsychosocial, I now have names. 11 years ago, I didn't have names for this, mind body, but now we have biopsychosocial. And I waited for everybody to catch up, I guess. They're benefiting from the ability to have these conversations.
Yeah.
And the fact the way I work, sometimes we're just talking for a long while. They're releasing a lot of crud. And then I'm showing them some stuff and they go home and do it at the gym.
And when you say, I think it's interesting that you said catching up to you, because I think that does bring up a point that you and other people that we've talked to have kind of taken this approach of doing the biopsychosocial model, and I don't want to say model, but taking that approach of really honing in on not just the physical aspect of someone. Because in physical therapy school right now, we learn a lot about here's how you use manual therapy techniques, here's the best therapeutic exercise. What was your mindset as a young PT or a young professional coming out of school and realizing at what point did you realize, I have something else to offer beyond just therapeutic exercise and beyond just manual therapy, but I have this level of emotional intelligence that I can use to benefit myself and my patients?
I went into physical therapy. I went to physical therapy school so that I could bring what I did as an athletic trainer to a bigger population. So I had a glass ceiling with athletic training at the time. We weren't in the clinics, we weren't, it's funny because if you work as an athletic trainer in the training room, your first injury, you're sitting there, a lot of more first aid, acute care management than PT kind of has taken ownership on. They're not really trained, and you kind of have to see how you're trained with that, but and you're taking them all the way through, and you're setting up, you're informing the doctor what you want them to look at. And then you go to PT and you're in some subservient role or something like that. And it was kind of funny because the PTs always are like, I'm better than an HEC. And I was like, really? Because why? So I think that was my thing. I didn't wake up. I went to physical therapy school because I was like, you know what? The sport is stroke. The sport is pregnancy. The sport is, I was just like, this needs to be you see an athlete, there's something that's my toe is broken, let's tape it up and I'm going to go out there. How could I've always been very interested in the psyche and, that's just the person I was. And how does that get one person to deal with their pain? And I think I always approached, okay, what do we got to deal with? What do you want to do? What's the gap? Let me fill in the gap as best as possible with you. And, so it wasn't really waking up. It was just more okay, I need to go to physical therapy school. That's what I need to do next. Okay. And then I'm going to be able to do this.
Yeah, that's where we're at now. Mm-hmm. And that's a big step. But you've utilized then, I think this process of identifying what one of the major barriers for, the patients I've worked with is the communication, and really whether we have the time to do it because of the setting, or we have an ulterior motive to get 17 different exercises in, or whatever the reason might be. I think that identification of really we need to get to the problem here by talking is big. And I know we definitely emphasize it with the classes that we've took. We've had a lot of opportunities to try and practice open communication, but for you, with your population, it sounds like you almost, if you're not giving them the time, you're doing them the disservice. So I'm wondering if, let's say this was a consultation with a potential client right now, and you really were getting a feel for what their problems are, what would be some of the most important questions you would ask on that first visit or second?
Well, I have a very biopsychosocial assessment. So, and an intake. My intake even asks things like, yes, in fact, I stay away from where are you hurting? I try not to make that the focus of the visits. It's more what are you having difficulty doing? Mm-hmm. Do you sleep at night? Do you, functional? Try to stay functional. And then what is this, where is your pain? Of course, where is your discomfort? I don't really like to use the word pain so much because, pain has a story in itself. The words we use have to be, you have to be mindful of the words that we use. And, how's this interrupting your life? What are your goals? I ask, what are your 3 goals from this session? and then from my services. And I try to see where they're at. Because if they're like, well, I want to be 100%, I don't want to have any pain. And, they come and see me after other stuff has not worked for them, they feel, or they heard about me from a friend and they've been dealing with something and complaining, and the friend's like, you got to go see Lisa or whatever. Like, so when they tell me that's been going on, and they're like, and I'm like, okay, so you said you can commit to a month. You didn't pick the 3-month thing. You didn't pick the 6-month, so like, what do you want to do? And they're like, well, I don't want to have any pain. Mm-hmm. They also, want to be 20 pounds lighter, and they want to, and I say, we have 4 weeks. Like, what do you want to focus on here towards that? I don't say we can't do that. I don't know. Maybe some light will strike enlightenment one day and they'll change their whole diet, and in a month they do that. I don't know, but I'm going to set realistic goals. And my goals are not like range of motion of whatever. My goals are like getting up and down the stairs 3 times because that's, how I have to do to take care of my kids.
All right. I'm sorry. I wanted a quick follow-up on that then. The feedback, it seems like, that you might have gotten over the years of practicing these assessments has got to be critical. Otherwise you wouldn't have developed to become so efficient with them. Do you often ask your clients or your patients for feedback about, hey, how do you feel like I'm communicating what I want to get done? Or do you feel like you're given the opportunity to discuss the things you want to discuss? Because I've found out that there's people I can ask that and they're like, wow, I've never given a medical professional feedback before on how they're doing their job. And they don't know how to answer that. I'm wondering how you get your feedback typically.
Yeah, we're just having a conversation. So if I have to be a good body reader. Isn't that what I went to school for? And then also with the yoga, you get even better and, analyzing movement. It's also knowing how to communicate as a professional. I work as a professional. So I think if you're a professional, is this all right with you? Like I have a very much more, and it's evolved over time as I've learned more skills. I have a very much more coaching relationship than treatment relationship. I have the bag of tricks of treatment if we need it. But I got to tell you, a lot of the reasons they weren't getting better is because they needed the coaching. And the body then did what it needed to do. Yeah. And so sometimes I'll do like every once in a while, like I'll send out for like my company, like, do you feel like it's about priced, like, do you get your money's worth? Do you get this kind of thing? But on a personal thing, I'm always ending my stuff with, they're making the decision. Like that's another thing that flips with coaching versus treatment. Like it's not my treatment plan. Right. I give them information that I know and resources and connect them a lot of times with some people. You're interested in acupuncture, you're interested in other things, you've used that before, it's been helpful. When they tell me that's been helpful for them, I'm not going to be like, well, I'm sorry, but we're not going to use it. Like, sure. If you want to pay for it, I have a friend across the way that, I like how she works, and then I'll say, I can get you in touch with that person. And it's always, that's part of my thing. That's the thing. And I'm going to tell you, I'm not a therapist for everyone. Because there's a hell of a lot of people that don't want to take self-responsibility or be accountable. Yeah. They just want to complain. And I can hear they're in the psyche of it. And if you're depressed, but then I need to send them to my neighbor, the counselor.
So it sounds like to me that giving them control and choices is really important from what it sounds like you're saying. And then also sort of knowing your limitations and your own personal boundaries, I guess, of what you feel comfortable that you can help someone with, and really maybe even before starting a practice, figuring that out about yourself first. What do you feel like you can feel comfortable and confidently treat without stepping outside of your own bounds? And I wanted to ask you one more question before we kind of dive into some entrepreneurial questions. What about yoga in terms of the philosophy of yoga struck you as a person? And then how have you translated that philosophy into the common modern physical therapy practice?
I think it's what I just said, like the whole path of yoga is about self-realization. What is it I can do? It's not about sitting there like, oh, I've lost my brother, I've lost my leg, I've lost my job, I've lost. Even in the evaluations, it's like, how depressing is it to like be not feeling well, and then somebody's like, okay, so here's your problem list. Here's your, here's all the work you're going to have to do to even get there. It's like, again, the language. So that's probably it the most. Like,
how has your language changed since you first started as a as a
Well,
therapist?
I think I learned to be very, linear, cause and effect. This goes to this and this and that. But I think I speak as the yogi. Like I appreciate the fact that I may not be your therapist, or I hear your pain. I see your pain. That's another thing I tell people. I'm like, I see your discomfort. I see, whatever. This is what I know, and that ability to literally like put down the ego. And so, like you had asked before, it's like they're not used to a medical person. Like right when they come in, I'm like, all right, this is a two-way street. I got these degrees on my wall or whatever because I went to school and I did all the work and I got this whatever. But like,
Right.
I so don't know what's going on in your story, like your life. Like you are the expert, and I'm doing more of trying to convince them of that, the captain of their own ship. And I have an intro time to do that. So I know it's hard with a lot of ways the things are done now. Like you can't really, they don't set it up. But I have a consult just for that because I need to know if we're on the same page. And I think my yoga has given me enough self-awareness. The yoga has helped me. I don't even necessarily get on a mat. But if I can identify myself and communicate with myself and know the person I am, and then I went on to be an axiologist, whole nother story, but I study literally objectives on psychosocial. So I have an objective for somebody, or I can give that to a coach in performance for their athlete, why they're not coming to the practices and doing the same in the game. Where's the thing? I have something objective and we can coach that a little bit. But it's really about me knowing about me.
Yeah. And that sounds like a great segue then as to, and you mentioned as to what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. I'm curious, could you take us through a rundown of your day-to-day routine? How is it different now than it was when you started PT?
So different. I pick where I put my energy. And like I said, I've had different variations. So, I had when I started out, it was all I knew. Make the appointments, have the receptionist, they book. We try to make sure they book for the next, everybody 4 to 6 weeks, 2 times the Tuesday, Thursday crew, or the Monday, Wednesday, Friday crew, or the Monday, Wednesday crew. I don't even know if people get 3 times a day now. I stopped working in that environment in 2011. And it's like, no matter what they had on their prescription of an injury or whatever, everybody got the same thing. And there's procedures and things. So now I have their interview. They set themselves. I try to make them, I've been over the years trying to do more and more. I let go of my personal assistant, not my normal personal assistant, but like my receptionist to do all of that for them. Because again, part of my brand is you got to know, like if you won't even click on a thing to make your appointment yourself, that's convenient for you on my scheduler, I don't think I'm the one for you because I'm going to probably ask you to do something more than that, And they're almost like little filters. So I can use my energy to how I best bring myself. And then it depends on my day of what I'm doing, but I might do some virtual stuff. Mondays and Tuesdays, I've made that my clinical days and some alternating Fridays. And that might be where I'm actually on, in person with someone. But I've switched even more and more to be doing more consulting and like getting together people, because there's none of those bridge builders. Like, like I've got this hormone study from this one, from the gynecologist, and I'm dealing with back pain from this and that. I try to network, and maybe I'll send them to somebody else for 2 times 10 for their insurance. And then they'll work with me for the soul coaching or life stuff and health coaching aspect, talking to them and working with, who they maybe need to talk to. And that might be just a couple of hours. So I really work with people one-on-one on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Fridays, and then the other days I'll do some virtual things. So sometimes I'm on the computer like this, and sometimes I'm working with them in person, and I just have the days that I'm doing that, and then other days, like on Thursdays, I'm home, and I'm just doing that stuff.
Wow. Well, I think that sounds like the kind of day that we're hoping to one day have, or days that we want to be able to have and be in control of that, and it's part of the reason why we started this. But I wanted to kind of go off of that, and that we listened to your interview on Greg Todd's podcast about all the different areas that you are, dipping your feet in now business-wise. And I wanted to ask, what kind of advice would you give to, say, a young physical therapist or fresh out of school physical therapist, or someone in school who wants to go beyond just the clinic? They have this sort of, I can speak from my own personal opinion that it sort of scares me to think of a 50-hour a week in the same office, same place all week. What are some things that what would you say to someone who's worried about that, who fears that kind of that lifestyle?
Well, in general, I would say you need to sit down and sort of set up like your goals. Like my brother is a physical therapist. He's 4 years out and he's like, I want to pay off my debt. There's a different motivation there. There's I will maybe go to that 50 hours a week, but I'm saying like, I'm going to put this much money away and I'm going to not do this. And then I'll be paid off and then I'll be free to do whatever. Kind of like, what are your goals like for 5 years out, like in your life? Like literally decide what lifestyle you would like and then interview with those questions in mind for the job. Stop going to your interviews to just go get a PT job. Like if you have to and you have to pay your bills, let that be like the second round, like after this first round didn't work out. Because this is your life, like your work. I mean, aren't you saying that to these people that are coming in such pain and stress and this and that? You got to practice what you preach. And then to thy own self be true. I mean, it just works. For me personally, I'd probably tell you to get on my website and do the health provider index, because that's what this is about. Your personal motivators, your personal behaviors, how you view yourself in healthcare. It's very specific to healthcare lingo. It asks you in healthcare lingo, in who you are, and then how you view yourself in the whole big picture. That's important to know. Do you see, you guys see yourselves as kind of leaders, or else you wouldn't be doing this podcast.
Right.
But some of your peers are not really interested in being professional primary care PTs.
And I think that's fine for them. Like you said, that's their path. They want to go down that route for whatever their motivations may be. I'm wondering, for those that are interested in going down a path that allows them to put their energy where they wish, as you put it, what were the biggest obstacles that you've come and conquered?
The self, and then what are your resources that you have? Who do you know? What populations are you in? Make it easy, okay? If you are a parent of 2 little ones in elementary, like I used to do yoga club in my kids' elementary school back in when they were in elementary school. And we did yoga club, and it was a free thing. I did whatever. I had my assistant eventually go do it. And they'd come for an hour, learn yoga, how to be good, so I'd be following the character traits to just be good people, but they'd be learning about yoga and this and that. I literally still have somebody who's like a freshman in high school who's like loved my yoga camp thing. Like they used to fight over going to this, and it, but it was like, that was it, right? And then their moms would be like, oh, asking questions, or, like it was easy that way. I was there. It wasn't like it was another job on top of my other job. Yeah. If you want to be in athletics, then you be around sports and volunteer on the, with your kids' sports thing and get to know people. It's relationship. That's it. That's the only difference. It's not money. I don't even know how I started my own practice. Like in the beginning, we had just moved here. Like I knew no one. Like I don't even understand, but
yeah. Hope it happens like that for us then one day.
Yeah, I just feel like you have a vision and then you make it work. And so like, how much money does it take to go 3 hours, 2 days a week to people's houses?
Yeah.
If you have high risk aversion, I've heard everything. I've heard everything from my own peers. And I'm telling you, I don't get bullied like I get bullied from other PTs. Don't get bullied from chiropractor and whatever. They don't bully. It's the other PTs that are like, well, you can do it because, whatever. Everything from I have more money or more time or a better husband or whatever. It's like, I was doing this like regardless, like I'm creative. So I think for some people, maybe they're not creative enough, but and then you get help for that. Call me up for an hour and I'll give you a million ideas. Just tell me your demographic,
Being resourceful, being a part of your community is a big part of what I think you've mentioned. Being a leader, you've got to be active. And it sounds like it's a big takeaway. If you're not building those relationships either with other professionals or within your community and showing up to work for your 8 to 4 or 9 to 5, you're limiting yourself right there. And it sounds like you're saying just do it.
People work with you because they trust you.
Yeah.
Can't PTs get that already? Nobody knows what the hell you do.
Yeah.
We didn't take a trust class. Taking close, but that's tough.
Yeah.
You know what you do,
right.
But all you do is talk about it with other PTs.
Right.
You need to go to other conferences. You need to go give the talk to the Gynecological Society or the American Orthopedic Society.
Yeah.
Well,
or something.
I think you just summed up the pretty much entire reason why we wanted to have this podcast, and that's about changing mindsets, about limiting the excuses, taking them away, saying that here are people who are doing incredible things with our community of PT students and the general public. And we want to be respectful of your time, Lisa. And before we let you go, though, I want to give you an opportunity to please tell us where we can find out more about you on social media, on the internet, any projects that you have coming out. We would love to share that with our audience.
Great. Thanks so much. You can pretty much get my social media and what I'm doing, drlisahollandpt.com. My company's www.bellyguru.com to get an idea of kind of corporate me and personal me. I'm kind of rebranding just to me, letting BellyGuru go. And that brand. And then, of course, on the social media, there's some Instagram inspiration visual for Guru Goddess Tribe and my programming there. And Twitter, active with other therapists on there at YogaDoc, D-O-C, at YogaDoc NC. And again, all of that, there's little clicks in the bottom of my website, probably the easiest. And find me on Facebook, Dr. Lisa Holland PT or BellyGuru.
Great. And we will put a link to all that, to all of those accounts in our show notes, as well as a little bit of biography, background about Lisa. So feel free to check that out. Lisa, we can't thank you enough. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you guys for taking your time to do this and share this with your other, students and other, hopefully, leaders that are going to hire you.
You got
like you.
Great story, and it really it is inspirational. I think there's going to be a lot of other people out there as much as we can share this video and share this content with them. Hopefully, are inspired as well.
All right, thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of Two Nobodies Talking Podcast.